Hey everybody, it's Brian here.
I'm Tim.
And we're doing something different here in Cheap Thrills. Usually it's junk food that is consumed on this program, but occasionally Tim and I are going to have chats about different things, maybe pop culture related or otherwise. Today, Tim, you pitched that we talk about the MCU.
Yes, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, just to give you some background here, at least I consider myself, if not a comic book fan, a fan of comic book derivative media. I've always been a fan of the movies that come out from comic book superheroes, and especially TV shows, cartoons. The 90s X-Men cartoon was a big one for me, Batman the Animated Series. But lately I noticed you were kind of sharing rather regularly on your wall on Facebook items that were critical of just kind of superhero movies in general. So that's what kind of got this idea rolling in my head.
Well, so the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's pop culture now. It's popular culture. In fact, it's the predominant culture.
Yes.
When you look at, what movies are this cycle, and eventually, like most things, it will have an end point.
Yeah.
But right now, it's, full steam ahead. Comic book movies are the norm.
Yeah.
They cost a ton to make, but they make a ton of money.
Yes.
People see them from all different, it's a broad spectrum, young, old, so, but, Tim, so, growing up, I was a bit of a comic book fan.
Yeah.
As life goes on, we kind of go down different roads. My interest in comics, there was a point where I not only devoured, some comic books, the actual printed media, but, all of that stuff that you were talking about, animated series, most of the ones from the 90s, early 2000s, I saw every episode of each.
Oh, yeah.
Tim, I remember the first time that I saw the 1989 Tim Burton Batman film.
Oh, yeah.
When he drops down onto these thugs, you could feel the wind and the rush of his cape coming down. And as a kid, it was like, wow, a comic book character on screen.
Yes.
Now, as an adult, as a film studies minor, as a mass comm major, as a cinephile who takes in, 300 to 400 movies a year, probably 800 this year at my current rate. Now I'm a film fan first, and not so much a comic book fan. And so now I look at these movies more from that perspective.
Okay.
And my tastes have shifted a little bit. We're going to look at these films, though. We're going to run through the current 11 that have been released. Now, this video is coming out right around the time that Ant-Man, which will be the 12th film of the MCU. It's the second. It's the last one from the second wave. So this one's kind of in prep of that.
Yes.
But enough introductory, let's get to the meat and potatoes of it. Phase 1, Avengers Assembled. May 2nd, 2008, Iron Man, directed by Jon Favreau. Let me preface this. Before we start getting into the films, here's one of my complaints.
Okay.
And maybe this will help kind of frame some of my thoughts. You look at these first 11 films, there is a Marvel house style that you see across the board. The films look, feel, sound, all alike. Like you've got a lot of different directors that have came in and worked at Guns for Hire for Marvel, but their cinematic imprint is literally lost in the shuffle. Maybe Iron Man 3, Shane Black,
that's the one I was going to
would be
argue.
the one that you could see hints of his style from his various other writing gigs and stuff.
Yeah.
But that's one of my concerns. And that's why, for me, this summer, the comic book movie I've most been anticipating is in August, Fantastic Four, because he's Josh Trank. I like what he did with Chronicle. And, he's not chained down by the restraints of the MCU. All those MCU films, they do look, they are one and the same in a manner of speaking. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. But Iron Man, let's talk about it.
I remember that one being, to me, that was just such a breath of fresh air, because at that time, it felt like we'd just come off your Daredevil movies, your Blade movies, to a certain extent, the Nolan Batmans, but those were doing grim, dark, and serious pretty well, and at least in my judgment, until they got to Dark Knight Rises, then they just kind of fumbled it a little bit, but I was so much grim, dark, and this is serious, and the weight of the world is on my shoulders, And for once we had a superhero who seemed to actually be having fun doing what he was doing, and to me that was the real appeal of the first Iron Man movie, is, he just actually seemed to be enjoying himself. So I liked that. That was the big appeal to me for the first Iron Man movie.
Yeah, Tony Stark has a lot of personality. He's a character with a lot of growth. A recovering alcoholic. He's also one of the richest men in the world. He's a very smart man. This film, it also tackled some current events. Dealt with political issues over in the Middle East. I think, and it's been a while since I've seen it, but this film works, and in some regards, may be the most well considered of the films.
Yeah.
It's the starting one. It, like you mentioned, it being a breath of fresh air. I don't dispute that. I'll co-sign that.
Yeah.
And if I had to probably pick one of these to revisit, that one would probably be at the top of my personal list.
Yeah. People have pointed out, and correctly, that Jeff Bridges' character's motivation really makes no sense at all. Like, what exactly was his goal? I have no idea, other than he was a villain.
That's another problem, again, with the MCU, is that all these films have familiar 3-act plays. Good guy. Most of them have 2 bad guys, a second-tier bad guy and a real baddie. You've got the muscle and then the mastermind. But yeah, a lot of these bad guys, and we'll get to some much later down that I was less than happy with, but a lot of the bad guys are never posed as serious threats. There's not a lot of stakes in these films. Like, yes, and we'll talk about that a bit more when we get to Avengers, entire cities are being, demolished in the wake of such events, and yet I never feel stakes, we never see, should we, I guess this is spoilers are going to be allowed here, we haven't gotten to that.
Spoilers!
I would just say that we don't usually see a lot of death in any of these films as far as characters go, established, comic book characters. There's one that pops to mind for much later down the road, but anyhow, it seems like we're both fairly positive, though, on Iron Man.
Yeah, and it makes sense. If that one had failed, the MCU would not have come to be.
And maybe that's another reason why I like it, is that it's not, because it was the first building block, it doesn't have to deal with as much leg work as some of these later films do, as far as carrying this continuous story along.
Yeah.
It kind of can feel like a standalone film.
Yeah.
Up next, June 13th, 2008. Both of these films came out the same summer. This would be The Incredible Hulk.
This was a movie, it kind of, was it a sequel to the Ang Lee Hulk? Was it a reboot? It was kind of fuzzy, because it referenced things that happened, but kept the same characters. Everyone was recast. But it's funny, because to me it felt like, let's do the Ang Lee Hulk again. Because the plot felt like, to me, it was a complete retread of that movie again. And, I don't know, to me this is one that I almost don't, I don't own a copy of it. I always skip it. I like Tim Roth and I like Tim Blake Nelson, both of whom were in this movie. But if you just watch the Ang Lee Hulk, this movie ends with Banner again on the run, not with his love interest and the general, ticked with him. So it was like, why bother? Nothing happened.
Yeah, this one's an odd bird. It sort of stands out on its own. Ang Lee's Hulk, 2004, much maligned film critically. It's my all-time favorite comic book movie. I like what Ang Lee did with it. It had pathos. There were some misfires. The idea behind this one, however, it's been established, is to make a popcorn flick.
Yeah.
That's what they wanted with the original Hulk. What they got was more of a family drama. So they wanted to do a Hulk film where, Hulk smash was the predominant mode. This was that. It jumps you right into the beginning. I haven't seen it since I saw it in the theater, but I believe there's a chase or some kind of action sequence in a jungle fairly early in. It kind of, gets the ball rolling and it keeps with it. Ed Norton's a great actor. Like, he was the best thing of last year's Oscar award winner, Birdman. And I think the world of him and his work. But, like, he, to me, was completely unmemorable as Hulk. Mark Ruffalo, the current Hulk. Maybe the best thing about the second Avengers, which I was not big on. We'll get to it. But, man, Eric Bana.
Yeah,
I liked him a lot in Ang Lee's Hall.
The Ang Lee Hulk cast was perfect in my judgment.
I butcher French names a lot, so I'm probably getting this wrong, but Louis Leterrier, I'll say, is the name of the director. And that name doesn't ring a bell, so I had to look into some of the other stuff he's done. He did the first 2 Transporter movies. He did Clash of the Titans in 2010. He's got something coming out in 2016. But so not a guy that, by looking at his resume, would jump out to me as somebody who I'm a fan of his. And again, we talked about these directors being absorbed into the MCU house style. I mean...
Well, I mean, he
we'll
seems
talk
to be
about
the
that
perfect...
with Ant-Man and Edgar Wright later on. I know
just based on his filmography, he sounds like the perfect man to be absorbed because, I mean, the Transporter movies, I think I might have seen one of them. It was so memorable. You know?
Right. Yeah. Well, he also did Unleashed. Again, a very bland action product.
Yeah.
So Incredible Hulk, both of us are saying kind of skip it.
Yeah,
maybe?
Exactly.
Okay.
I think you're better off skipping it.
We jumped 2 years ahead to May of 2010. Iron Man 2, Jon Favreau returns as director. You've got a couple villains going on. The one that sticks out, I think, in most people's minds is the one that was played by from the wrestler
Mickey Rourke.
Mickey Rourke,
as
you got
Whiplash.
Whiplash, right? Yeah. This film. Okay, here's another one of my problems, and this is not tied specifically to the MCU. This is one of my problems with comic book films, again, in general, in a broad sense. I'm usually always with them in the first act, because usually the first act is the most character-driven.
Yes.
People talk, real moments. Always, not always, that's not right. But a lot of times during the third act, when we finally get to the smash 'em up, which is inevitable, my eyes kind of gloss over, especially if the action is shot choppily or edited to death. This is a bad case of that, because I remember seeing this with a pal in the movie theater, and you get 2 robots fighting towards the end, and it's in nighttime, and it's dark, and it's not particularly staged well. Action set pieces, not blowing my skirt up. I'm left wondering, like, what's really going on? What's the stakes? Like, again, I'm kind of into this Tony Stark character, his travails, but by the time the third act rolled around, I had checked out.
And it's funny because, I don't know, I have mixed feelings on this one. I think I'm a little more positive on it than most people, because most people consider this to be the weakest link in the MCU chain. I very much loved the first act, like you said, but I wanted more of that, because here we have something I've really not seen in a superhero movie before. We have a man in court defending his right to be a superhero. And they're trying to, confiscate, because who wants a civilian to have that sort of weaponry? And he's going, no, it's not a weapon. It's more like a neck brace,
And that might be a prelude to the Civil War that we will get to later on.
And I will say, my fear is that they'll do the same thing in Civil War.
Is that they're gonna bring up a legitimate issue, and they're gonna plop it on the table in the first act, and by the third act, we're going to completely forget about that issue, and it will be solved with pew, pew, pew.
And will that be the third act, or will that be the sixth act? Because the Civil War is going to be spread apart over 2 films.
It is? I didn't know that.
Yes. We'll get to Sam Rockwell also in the film as Justin Hammer, another villain, completely forgettable.
If I may ask...
Almost as bad as his turn in Poltergeist.
Yeah, Terrence Howard or Don Cheadle?
Cheadle.
Okay, yeah, I'm in the same boat.
Cheadle.
Okay.
More personable.
Yeah.
Filled the shoes better. Up next, Tim, jumping again, a whole year ahead, May of 2011, Kenneth Branagh's Thor.